Hey up. Right, I had a different video planned for today. I was going to fit some, or at least one accessory to the new Classic 350, but it rained almost all day, so I had to have a little bit of a rethink. Now, since announcing the Classic 350 some weeks ago, I've been getting loads of requests for videos, two in particular. One from people saying, I was going to buy a Meteor 350, now the Classic 350's come out, I'm not so sure which one I want, can you make a video comparing the two? Or the other regular request, I've got a Classic 500 last generation, I'm tempted by the new Classic 350, but I'm not sure whether I should or not. Can you make a video comparing the two? Well, of course I can, but I'm going to break those two subjects in half. Today I'm just going to concentrate on the comparison between the Meteor 350 and the new Classic 350 for those that are in the market for a bike but they're not quite sure which one to go for. Now, I can't tell you which of the bikes is best for you because it depends on so many things. It doesn't matter what I say in this video, I'll get little lectures in the comments section from all over the world. I can't sort of cater for every geographical location and the idiosyncrasies, if you like, of what is required for personal travel in those regions. I can only talk on a very general, broad spectrum. But before I get started, I will say this. Us Westerners are conditioned from birth to be sensible, cautious, practical and careful with our money. Now, I think this has a greater influence on us when we're younger, say in our 20s. But even for older guys or girls, motorcycles are, if you like, a guilty pleasure. The desire for a motorcycle is an emotional one. Let's face it, for the price of either of these bikes, you can buy yourself a pretty decent second-hand motor car, which is going to be far more practical. And I know for a fact that a lot of the people that watch my videos have a car as well anyway. And what I see, the way I interpret it from a lot of the questions that are asked of me, is that people are often seeking justification for the choice of motorcycle to buy. Justification that will lead to approval from a spouse or partner, or even from parents. Or even approval from your peers, the guy that you sit and talk to down the pub, or the guys that you ride with. Now, the best piece of advice when it comes to choosing a motorcycle that I can give anyone is buy the bike that makes your heart sing. It's your money, it's your bike, so it's your choice, and to hell with what anyone else thinks. Over the years, I've seen far too many people unhappy with the choice of motorcycle because they chose something that for them was a compromise in an attempt to please someone else. And that includes how tall you are. I get so many people asking me how tall I am. I'm 6 feet tall. Because they're worried that if they buy a particular bike, they're going to look too tall for it. I've been riding 40 odd years and never once has anyone said to me, "Oh, you're a bit big for that bike, aren't you?" Even though frequently I've caught a glimpse of myself in a reflection in a shop window on that bike, and I've thought it to myself. A motorcycle should not be a fashion accessory. It's not a pair of trousers or a jacket. It's a mode of transport, and as long as you can physically and safely ride that bike, it doesn't matter what you look like on it to others. You don't buy it for them, you buy it for you. I'm going to presume that if you're watching this video, both of these bikes are on your shortlist for your next motorcycle purchase. This is not a review of the two bikes, it's a comparison, and if you haven't seen the reviews that I've done on both of these bikes, the little information button top right hand corner of the screen will provide you with links to both of those videos if you want to watch them. Right, let's get on with it. Now, both the Classic 350 and the Meteor 350 share the same engine and the exact same chassis. Both bikes are dressed up very differently though. In fact, to my mind, both are designed to appeal to different age groups maybe, or certainly a different mindset. But the common denominators between the two bikes mean that they're both capable of doing exactly the same job. They're both going to make good commuters, they're both going to make good weekend fun bikes, and they're both going to be perfectly capable of some long distance touring, as long as you have reasonable expectations as to how many miles you're going to be able to cover in a day and how fast you're going to be able to travel. Neither of these bikes are going to be Autobahn mile munchers. Now, I've been told by one or two commenters that both bikes have different engine maps. That might be the case, but if they do, it's very subtle. The top speed and fuel economy is as near as damn it the same on both bikes. So what it boils down to basically is which of these two bikes floats your boat the most, and to some extent how much cash you've got in your pocket. The Classic 350 is the latest stage in the evolution of the world's longest running, continuously produced motorcycle. My observation is that when Royal Enfield designed this J-platform chassis and engine, they designed it very much with the Classic in mind, and the Meteor was perhaps an afterthought. The Classic 350 epitomises the late 1940s motorcycle design. The aesthetics of the engine and the chassis were designed to reflect that. The complete lack of a rear seat rail, the unique and maybe odd to modernise top shock mount, and a unit construction engine designed to look a bit like a pre-unit engine. Unique markers which, along with the design of the tank, the seat configuration, the famous Royal Enfield casket or shroud that contains the instrument panel and the headlamp, and those deeply valenced steel mudguards, leave no doubt in the observer's mind that he's looking at the latest generation of the famous Bullet. Every component on this bike was designed to create a particular image, a particular identity. So, to Western eyes, at first, the Meteor looks a little bit of a hodgepodge. It's been described as an easy rider style bike, a cruiser. Here in the UK, these appeared as what we know as factory customs, bikes styled on the Harley Davidson Sportsters. These were never a particularly successful segment of the market in the UK, and they sort of had the heyday in the 1980s, fizzling out into the early 1990s. But somehow the Meteor doesn't really fit even with that segment. The strange rear shock hangers, the same single cylinder faux pre-unit construction engine. It's not a bad looking bike, but at first some of the details don't seem to fit. It looks like a Bullet dressed up to look like a cruiser. But what you've got to remember is that Royal Enfield has been an Indian company longer than it was ever a British company, and the marque has its own unique history. Back in the 1990s, when Asha Motor took Royal Enfield over, in an effort to revitalise an ailing brand, they introduced some very similar Harley-esque bikes based on the original Bullet, and the pre-unit construction engine and configuration of the chassis were also features of the original Meteor. So when you fuse those two elements of Royal Enfield history together, what you actually get is a very genuine homage to models of Royal Enfield's past, and the bike actually starts to make sense. Both bikes offer a classic sit-up and beg rider configuration, although the riding position on the Meteor sets the rider a little bit further back. It's a slightly more relaxed riding position to the Classic, which puts more weight on the rear suspension of the Meteor, giving a somewhat softer riding sensation to the Classic and a slightly slower steering response. I'm not trying to say that the Meteor handles badly, it's a great handling bike. I'm comparing it to the Classic, which feels a little bit sportier to me. On the Classic, your weight is a little bit further forward. The handlebars feel lower, and this gives the rear suspension a slightly stiffer and more responsive feel. Though in reality, I think on both models the suspension is identical. Both bikes are really comfortable to ride, although I do think that the Classic has a slight edge over the Meteor. And one thing that does strike me slightly over the two bikes is that the engine on the Classic does feel slightly smoother. Again, I do think this might be down to the fact that the rider's weight on the Meteor is further back, so vibrations are allowed to have free rein more than they do with the Classic, which is deadened slightly by the rider's weight being positioned more over it than behind it. Either way, don't let that put you off the Meteor. The difference is subtle and could even be altered by the amount of fuel that's in the tank at the time of me riding the Meteor. Personally, I think for long distance touring, rider comfort is at the top of most people's lists. And as far as rider comfort goes, neither of these bikes disappoint. Both bikes are smooth and responsive, there's no glitchy throttle mapping. Both bikes feel premium, there's no rattling, everything fits as it should do. And they're certainly a far cry from the Royal Enfields of yesterday. Now, general fit and finish. I've had personal experience of two Royal Enfield Meteors and just experience of my red and chrome Classic 350. And I have to say, using those bikes as my sole indicators for making this comment, the Meteor to me does come over as a slightly more refined and polished product aesthetically. It is every bit as good as any modern Japanese bike that you might come across on a showroom floor. The Classic is sort of somewhere between the last generation of Classic and the current Meteor. Now, the Meteor does of course have the advantage that a lot of the components have been blacked out with matte or semi-matte paintwork, which is very forgiving and it's easy to hide a multitude of sins. Whereas chrome work and polished alloy is the exact opposite. And as you may already know if you watched my original review of the Classic, I was a little bit disappointed in the quality of the paintwork. But I will reiterate, the problems I've encountered are not likely to be an issue with the single colour iterations of the Classic. Visible masking lines on the chrome that haven't been cleaned off prior to fitting, finger marks under the lacquer on the tank, serve to distract slightly from what is a quality machine. Some of the chrome isn't great, and some of the chrome plated plastic trim looks and feels cheap. The polishing on the engine casings and the fork legs is okay, but it's not great. And although most aspects of this bike do seem a significant upgrade from the outgoing Classic models, some, and they are only aesthetic touches, do seem to be a step backwards. I certainly get the feeling, where my particular bike is concerned, that a little bit more effort was put into the Meteor than it has been with the Classic 350. I know I've only got this particular bike to go on, and I may well be wrong, I hope I am, but I do feel that if you're paying a premium for a premium colour scheme, that should come with premium finishing and paintwork. Now, as a year-round all-weather commuter, there's no doubt about it, the Meteor is definitely going to be your best bet. That matte black paintwork isn't going to last forever, but it should get you through 2 or 3 winters without encountering any corrosion issues. The Classic, on the other hand, is going to require a relentless and fastidious cleaning and protection program to protect it from your average British winter, compared to the Meteor. And then there's standard equipment. The new Classic 350 comes with a fuel gauge, hazard warning lights, 2 trip meters and an economy indicator. and wait for it, even a clock. I wouldn't say that these things are essential, but I know that a lot of customers do. The Meteor comes with all of these things, and on top of that you get a gear indicator and Royal Enfield's famous tripper, both of which are missing from the Classic 350. So on paper at least, it seems that with the Meteor you're getting a better equipped, more durable and perhaps slightly better finished machine compared to the slightly more expensive Classic 350. Especially if you opt for the base model Meteor. But as I said at the beginning of this video, your choice of motorcycle is an emotive one, and your choice should depend on what your probable usage is going to be that bike and how that bike makes you feel. Now, I was tempted by the Meteor. Cruisers are not really my style, but the base model Meteor did actually click with me in the end. But I chose the Classic because it's my kind of bike. Now, I know I've had a bit of a grumble about some aspects of this bike, but I don't regret buying it, not for one moment. I know those issues will be ironed out eventually. And even with those niggles there, this bike just makes me feel so good when I'm riding it. And although I know we all have different priorities and there are factors that we all need to take into account when we're choosing a bike, everything about it, for me, hits the spot. Now, I presented to you, the viewer, what I consider to be the most notable or important differences and commonalities between these two bikes. And if you're still sitting on the fence at the moment, looking at either side of that fence, looking at the Meteor and the Classic, trying to decide which one you want, I think what it boils down to is you've just got to go with your heart, not necessarily your head. They're both fantastic bikes and they both have the pros and the cons, but really at the end of the day it just comes down to what you can afford and which two of these bikes stir up the most positive emotion. By the way, before I go, the service intervals on both of these bikes are 6,000 miles, not 3,000 miles. I'm not entirely sure, again, where that information's come from. We had this with the Interceptor 3 years ago, but clearly someone has reviewed this bike who is incapable of reading the owner's manual. Once again, thank you so much for watching this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. You know that I appreciate it. I would also appreciate it if you would consider leaving a like, and if you're not a subscriber, subscribing to the channel. I will of course be back next week, so until then, please ride safely, and I'll see you soon.